Right.
When you're ready.
Oh, okay. So first question is just to do with the Dreamliner. When Ethiopian Airlines became the first carrier outside of Japan to have the 787 Dreamliner, how will that impact on travel within the region? Some say it will transform air travel within the region.
The 787 is going to transform air travel in the continent for many reasons. The aircraft is technologically advanced, next stage technology, and it has a lot of features, especially for the airlines. It's fuel efficient, and also there is efficiency in maintenance because of the composite material. Maintenance will be cheaper, and it's about 20% more efficient on fuel. For the passengers, it has also a lot of features: wider window, more humidity, and which reduces fatigue and jet lag, and also better cabin, better lighting, dimmable and adjustable windows, and less noise. It's 60%. It has 60% less noise, and it's noticeable. And we have it for the last 3 months now, and we're very happy on the performance. It's doing very well, and customers' feedback is really encouraging. We have a very good feedback, and because of the range, mid-size capacity, longer range. Now we'll have more and more non-stop flights from our hub in Addis to Asia, Middle East, Europe, and North America. And that is now what customers are wanting. And therefore, long haul with short haul in African connections. So it's going to increase connectivity of the continent with the rest of the world.
And what is the market now for budget travellers coming out of or within Ethiopia? Because I've heard about A-Sky. So tell me how that airline has performed and what it's meant within the region.
The objective of the establishment of the airline A-Sky is to expand the successful hub that we have in Addis to West Africa. In our Vision 2025, one of the objectives and strategies that we're working on is expanding the hub. The Addis hub is successful in being the best, one of the best entry gateway to the continent, especially from Asia, Middle East, and Europe. And since the continent is big, 1 billion people, very large geography, we need another hub in West Africa. And as you know, West Africa has been underserved, especially since the demise of Air Afrique, Ghana Airways, Nigeria Airways. The region has been underserved. So the hub in Lome is doing very well with A-Sky now, 6 airplanes, and it's covering the region. We have also another plan to develop another hub for Southern Africa, somewhere around Zambia, and then for Central Africa, somewhere in the DRC. So this is going to increase the connectivity within the continent. Of course, it is much, much better than it used to be, because, you know, in the past, a decade or two ago, you know, to travel from one point in Africa to a neighboring country, the only way was to go through Europe. Nowadays, this is no more the case. But now with more and more services like A-Sky, it's going to change the mobility and connectivity. And this is, you know, going parallel to the growth that the continent is experiencing, GDP growth, in general economic development.
Why is it taking the continent so long to join in with the budget airline market, do you think?
As you know, the budget airline market, what generally we know as low-cost carriers business model, is not a single or a homogeneous business model. You know, you have different business models also within low-cost carriers business model. There are some factors or some conditions you need to develop a budget airline or a low-cost network. For instance, density. Traffic density is one important factor because it's based on volume of traffic and economies of scale. We're not sure if the required density is available in those markets. The markets are fragmented, very thin markets. So from our opinion, we don't believe that there is enough density to justify for high volume, high frequency, same type of airplane, and high asset utilization. And also, the cost of operation in Africa is high. And that has to do with the airport infrastructure, air traffic control, and so on. And fuel. Fuel cost is relatively higher than in Europe and the United States. So we're not sure how really a low-cost carrier can bring the existing cost to further lower level.
So on that note then, in Kenya and Tanzania they're starting up two low-cost carriers, FastJet and Fly 540. What do you think then is the potential for those carriers, do you think?
I would say the potential will be more within a country than cross borders. For instance, within Kenya or within Tanzania or within Ethiopia for that matter, or within Sudan. The trade level, the trade relations between African countries is still at its initial stage. And therefore the traffic, as I said before, is thin. But within country, there is a high potential. For instance, we have successful low-cost carriers in South Africa. It's a big market. We can have the same in Nigeria, especially larger territories and larger population. So I would imagine the success will be more on domestic markets than transnational markets.
Right, okay, because they talk about expanding. I mean,
Yeah, I understand,
they're starting domestic within Kenya or within Tanzania and then branching out to across Africa. Do you think then the more success will be if they stay domestic?
Yes, mainly because, as I said, the density of the traffic and also the regulatory framework. It's not completely free. I mean, it's not completely open skies. There is still bilateral air services agreements between countries. So there are frequency limitations and also capacity limitations.
What do you think then? They obviously they want to go further. Do you welcome that competition if these budget airlines do?
Yes, yes. Ethiopian Airlines, 66 years in business. We've been exposed to all kinds of competition from European carriers, African carriers, Gulf carriers, especially now the Gulf carriers with huge expansion plan. So competition, we understand that competition will be there. It will be tougher and tougher, both from African carriers or African initiatives like what you have said now, and also from Gulf carriers, European carriers, United States carriers, and Chinese carriers, of course, now. So competition is, we believe that competition is the father of efficiency. It makes us more efficient. It makes us more customer focused. So of course we welcome competition.
And what about the price structure? FastJet are talking about prices starting around $20, coming up to $60 with tax, allowing people who have never travelled before on airlines, who use the matatu or buses to get around. Do you think that sort of price range is sustainable or not?
Well, I wouldn't. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on somebody else's business plan. But those kinds of prices are music to my ears. So I don't know if it works.
Because flying within the African continent is one of the most expensive places in the world.
Yes,
so
yes.
For ordinary people to travel, it would need to come down a lot more.
You're absolutely right. I share you on that. But we have to see also what makes it so expensive. As I said, the cost of operation is relatively high. In fact, it's more expensive in West Africa than Eastern Africa. As I said, one is fuel. The first one is fuel. Fuel, in general, for the industry is a major challenge. As you know, for the last couple of years, it has been around $110, $115, $120 a barrel of oil. That's a huge challenge to the industry in general. But again, comparatively, it's more expensive in Africa than, in places, in some places in Africa, we pay around $6 a gallon, while we pay $3 in Europe. So those fundamental cost structures will be there. So I don't know how a new business model will be able to reduce those cost structures and therefore reduce the prices.
And just two more questions. Just in terms of budget carriers, one time seems to have gone down, and Flamingo Airlines, that was another budget carrier that started up a while ago in Kenya. Is the continent ready for budget carriers?
The continent could be ready, but the fundamentals for budget carriers, for low-cost carriers, as I said, the density of traffic and the freedom of flights. I mean, in the airline industry, asset utilization is very important. Airplanes are a very high capital assets, and therefore you have to utilize them as much as possible. And therefore, will we have enough traffic density to fly like 4 times, 5 times a day between 2 points to justify the asset utilization? And therefore, will we be able to reduce the cost of operation so that we can avail cheaper prices? Will we have the skies open for very flexible frequencies and very flexible flights? So these are the issues that we really need to work out in the continent for budget carriers.
And final question, what do you see as the potential for travel within Africa? When I spoke to people behind Fast Track, they're saying like 5 million more.
We went for the drill question.
Sorry, 5 million more passengers who had never flown before. You've got Dreamliner now. What do you see the potential for the continent?
The potential for the continent is very high.
Sorry, we just went for this drill.
Okay.
Sorry.
Huh? Okay.
The glamour.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Just
Uh-huh.
sorry about this. This is the last one. Isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
So,
And go.
so
Right.
potential for growth in the region.
The potential for growth in the continent of Africa is huge. There is no question about it because, number one, although from a low base, it's growing very fast, and that is propelled by the economic engine of GDP growth in most of the African countries, and the natural resources extraction, especially commodity prices, as you know, all over the world now, and they are on the peak side of the equation, and also the Chinese investment in the continent, Indian investment in the continent, and now the West is also waking up in terms of having the right approach, the right focus, the right attention for Africa. So, the continent has everything in order for fast growth, perhaps the second fastest growth next to China, Asia. Following to that, air travel is going to grow also because the most dominant mode of transport in the continent is air transport, because the other modes of transport are not well developed: train, rail, road, and the others. So definitely air travel is going to grow very fast between Africa and the rest of the world, and within Africa also. And now there is also more South-South trade relations between African countries, and there are also economic regions, as you know, within the continent. We have SAD of Southern Africa, COMESA, ECOWAS in West Africa. So trade and investment within the continent is going to grow, and that is going to cause high frequency of mobility and connectivity, and therefore huge growth in air travel is expected. So I share on that opinion.
I think we should just take that again, I'm afraid.
Oh,
There was intermittent drills. So
Sorry,
just
the drill
you can
kept
use
coming
bits
in.
of that.
Okay.
And
maybe if you just do it shorter, but I
Right.
get your drift.
Right.
Yeah, that's perfect. So sorry. What can you tell me briefly? What do you think is the potential for growth with air travel in the region?
Yeah, the continent is the continent has seen fast growth in the last 1 decade or 2 decades. Governance has improved, peace and stability has improved, and the continent is now focused on economic development. More than 20 African countries produce and export oil, and almost similar number with other natural resources, minerals, and the Chinese investment in the continent has been very fast, and almost every African country today, China is investing heavily. China is investing heavily in Africa for access of natural resources, and particularly access to strategic access to oil. And the African countries are also using Chinese investment to develop their infrastructure, roads, bridges, dams, and airports, and other constructions. So this all put together is going to drive huge growth in air travel. And air travel is the most dominant mode of transport in the continent, because road transport and rail is not well developed. So we will have to depend on air travel for some time to come. And this all gives you high growth in air travel.
Great. Excellent. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Sorry.